Hello, and good morning, everybody. Welcome to another episode of the TMI Show, the Ted Manila Information Show. That over there is the Ted of the show, Ted Rall. I'm the Manila Chan. Thank you for tuning in. We are going to go straight into our guest segment today because we have some time issues. We're going to go straight into the main topic today. We're going to be talking today about Ted Kaczynski, the Unabomber, as everyone knew him. Today marks the 29th anniversary, Ted, since the Unabomber's arrest. And about a week or so ago was the 30-year anniversary of the publishing of his manifesto, which, as I revealed last week, that I was finally getting around to reading. And I personally was kind of slack-jawed about the contents of what he wrote and how, without being too kind to a serial killer, some of the stuff he was saying, I think was kind of prescient. So, and
100%. And it's very, and his manifesto is getting sort of a second life now.
Yes.
Interestingly, among young people, the Gen Zers online, and also conservatives.
They're not alive back then.
And also conservative media.
Yes.
That's interesting because these are radical left ideas.
Yes, he was a super green, like, eco-terrorist, I guess, if you will.
Yeah, he was absolutely an eco-terrorist. Yeah,
he wasn't. I think some people have tried to portray him as like some sort of right-wing Nazi lunatic. I mean, lunatic maybe, but
perhaps
it's not right at all.
But certainly not. I mean, he believed, and a lot of people agree. I would be one of them, that settled civilization has had all sorts of very negative consequences that have led to many of the problems, not just ecocide that we're suffering now, but also the crisis, in our social relationships and so on. Anyway, we can go on and on and on. It's a very complicated and interesting subject. And I would recommend, who cares? I think I always separate the art from the artist. I don't care what kind of person he was or wasn't. That doesn't matter. The ideas are the ideas, whether they come from a lunatic or they come from someone who's not a lunatic. It doesn't matter.
Yeah. So with that, we're going to go into our guest segment first. I'm going to pop him on the screen here.
And let me introduce him, and I'll get into the basics here. All right, go ahead. Do you have to jaws it, or are we just doing it?
We're just doing it.
All right. Joining us is Larry C. Johnson. He's a veteran of the CIA and of the State Department's Office of Counterterrorism. He's the founder and managing partner of BERG Berg Associates, established in 1998. Larry provided training to the U.S. military's Special Operations Community for 24 years. He's been vilified by the right and the left. I know something about that, which means he must be doing something right. And we're here to talk about the anniversary. April 3rd, 1996, Ted Kaczynski was arrested in his cabin, a very simple cabin in Lincoln, Montana. That cabin sat in the lobby of the museum in not far from you there in Virginia for many, many years. I think the museum is no more. But anyway, that ended an 18-year bombing campaign that really mystified the FBI. They were trying to chase him down. Ultimately, his manifesto, which you've just finished reading, Manila, or are reading, is Industrial Society and Its Future. And he basically told the New York Times and the Washington Post that if they published this thing, he would stop blowing people up. He was sending package bombs to people like timber company executives and people like that. And so he said he'd cut it out if they published his, and they did. Ultimately, his brother, David Kaczynski, recognized his writing style and probably the ideas involved. And so he tipped off the authorities. The authorities promised that they were going to be relatively kind to him, but they weren't. And he was sentenced to death, would have been sentenced to death. He pled guilty, was sent to Supermax, where he died in June of 2023 at the age of 81. In the end, there were $50 million was spent by the FBI to track him down. And, what remains now are, finally, we're getting around to the ideas that he cared about. And so anyway, thanks so much for joining us, Larry Johnson.
Yeah, thanks for having me. Just a disclaimer, I don't claim to be a Kaczynski expert, but I was alive back then. I'm an old guy.
And you were at the agency, not the bureau.
Yeah, I was at CIA from 1985 to 1989 before moving to state counterterrorism. I got to say that during even in the counterterrorism shop at state, I don't recall any discussions or even interest in Kaczynski back then. It was, I guess, seen as strictly an FBI thing.
Mm.
And he was just really like cagey, right? To catch, like he tried to avoid patterns. Like he mailed his packages from different locations, primarily in the Western United States, but usually not the same ones. He even, he knew he didn't leave fingerprints on the bombs. He fashioned his own screws, for example, by hand. So knowing that, for example, that's the kind of hint that the FBI would look at, like, oh, these screws are primarily sold in this state, so it helps narrow the search. He was a smart guy, and he knew what kind of things they would likely be looking for.
Yeah, and what's interesting though is that as these bombings were taking place, normally there's a tendency in this country to when there is an act of violence like that, to seize on it and assign it or ascribe it to some foreign actor. And again, I don't recall during that period it ever becoming a priority issue to suggest that there, was this the Iranians doing it to us, or the whatever group we wanted to designate.
Well, the common thread where these were domestic targets, right? These were usually people. The targets were usually lumber companies, that kind of thing. So that suggests, knowing what we know about, like, the politics of the Pacific Northwest, that would have strongly suggested that someone interested in the environment, right?
Yeah, of course. You got to step back and look at. He was, in terms of IQ points, extremely intelligent, and yet this tactic was sort of crazy, because when you're going to use violence to accomplish an objective, you got to step back and say, okay, is this really the best technique, the best method to get me to where I want? What he's trying to persuade people that the future is dangerous under this industrial revolution, and yet by his very actions he's alienating people. They're not rallying around saying, hey, this is a great idea, yeah, let's send bombs to professors.
Yeah. Well, not to mention, like, many of those bombs they didn't take out their intended targets, right? They took out the executive assistants, they took out the mailroom people. Because those people tend to be, they don't open their own packages, right? I mean, was he just ahead of his time? I'm thinking of Luigi Mangione, right? I mean, now timber company executives might be viewed much more harshly, with more, as awareness of the environmental, like climate change and everything increases. Then at the time, they weren't really considered evil dudes.
Yeah, well, let's give him credit for being very skilled in building these improvised explosive devices. Mm-hmm. More often than not, people that come up with, sort of the terrorist cookbook, the bomb making manual that's out there on the internet, and they try to create these kinds of devices. They usually have accidents and wind up with a nickname like Lefty or One-Eyed Pete. Things don't always go right. The fact that he was able to construct these devices and then get them delivered and then have them detonate, mm-hmm. Reflects a high level of skill. So,
I think about the Weather Underground here in New York City, right? They were making bombs and blew up their own townhouse, in Greenwich Village, and were running around naked in the streets of Manhattan because all their clothes had burned off.
Yeah. Well, I mean, in Ramzi Youssef, the first bomber of the World Trade Center, he was building a device in an apartment in Manila, the Philippines. So, she goes, somebody building a bomb inside of me? Wait a second.
Wait a minute. I was pregnant one time.
But
I know you had some digestive tract issues earlier
Yeah,
this week.
that's right.
But he set his own apartment on fire, and that's actually what ultimately helped lead to his capture and arrest.
Yeah, I know a guy in South Asia who was a communist revolutionary, and he was making a bomb in his house, and he lost an eye and his dick. So that's not good.
Oh my God.
Yeah,
Well,
that can happen.
You should add, since you brought him up, Larry, Ramzi Youssef was held at the same Florence, Colorado Supermax prison that the Unabomber was held with, and they actually became good friends in that time. Isn't that bizarre?
Yeah, well, yeah, it's you got to hang with the people you're with. It is bizarre.
Yeah, not a lot of choices there.
It is, it is bizarre, but this. You're right, going back, drawing sort of the parallels with Luigi Mangione and then Kaczynski, except Mangione's not anywhere near the intellect that Kaczynski was.
Right.
And just his, he was very, if you will, very crude. He had you watch him when he's shooting the firearm, he's having a malfunction with it. So, he somehow corrected that and got the shots off. But this notion that we've got to employ violence to change the direction of society is, it's sort of quintessential Marxism, going back to, Marx and Engels and the Communist Manifesto.
Although in communism, this is viewed, what these guys like the Weather Underground are considered to have done is commit the error of getting ahead of the masses, right? There's always this idea that I or the small group of people can spark a revolution. Everyone will be inspired, but that just never doesn't work, right? I mean, you need as Lenin said, revolutionary doesn't start a revolution. The revolutionary recognizes a revolution when it happens.
Yeah. I don't know if we consider, the mindset of those who are, now mad at Elon and have decided to, key Teslas.
Yeah, that's not going to start any revolutions.
That's not exactly planting bombs, but the response of the government to that, it's going to be fascinating to see if that ends up having a deterrent effect as people get arrested and face some significant charges. Or if they're going to say, no, we're so committed to this, we're going to press on. Because if you think about it, the whole electric vehicle phenomena would be something you'd expect that Kaczynski would have been railing against if he was still alive.
Well,
let's talk about his state of mind. I mean, to the extent that it's important, he participated in the MK Ultra experiments when he was in college. If you want to talk a little bit about that, what that was, and there's a pretty strong case to be made that a lot of people came out of those experiments pretty traumatized and fucked up. The question is, was he fucked up anyway before that happened? And are these? I mean, I guess the background's important, but I think we should also focus on the ideas as well.
Yeah, the MK Ultra is as I recall, there were 3 different programs, and MK Ultra was one of them that some of it involved using, drugs like LSD as a way to see, the CIA was both trying to figure out how it could interrogate and get information out of communists. And also their experimentation on people, sometimes wittingly and other times unwittingly. So Kaczynski, I presume, was a witting participant.
Yeah, he was.
So
so this is when he was in college, right, at Harvard.
Yeah. So in the early 60s,
they probably offered him a nominal sum of money, right, to participate.
I don't actually know about that part yet. I mean, I've kind of fallen into this Kaczynski rabbit hole the last couple of weeks because it's just so fascinating on so many levels. I mean, when you look at his profile as a child prodigy, where he's obviously, we know now that he was very, very, very highly intelligent, and that his parents seemed to only prize his brain, is what, all accounts by his classmates and schoolmates said. And that even the classmates, the teachers, everybody, all the adults in his life seemed to only value him for his smarts. And it seemed like, I guess in today's terms, he didn't feel seen or heard, as the kids say today.
Yeah.
And he got into Harvard at age 16. He was so smart that he just advanced his way through everything, got into Harvard at 16. He was in grad school, before he was even old enough to drink. And at that point, he'd undergone 3 years of what we now know to be the MK Ultra experiments that were obviously devised by the CIA. I know that wasn't your area at the CIA. Did they talk about that at all, Larry?
No. And Ted will appreciate this. The normal view of CIA is they think of Sean Connery or Pierce Brosnan.
Agent Pat Webb.
It's Dilbert.
Yeah,
it is.
I believe that.
Yeah, it really is. Dilbert better defines sort of what goes on, and in a way, this MK Ultra disaster is sort of indicative of that. Some people get some ideas, and there's always the assumption that that there's some really smart people that are thinking these things through. And all I can tell you is, in my experience, I saw them. A lot of decisions were made not because they really sat down and did brought intelligence and analysis to it, but it was more of the friends and family program or the bureaucratic, imperative, which is why I put Dilbert right there as the quintessential CIA operative.
It was, it seems like back in the 50s and 60s, right? The agency, it was a successor to the OSS, right, after World War II.
Yes.
It seemed like, all of America was a little wackier and a little wilder and crazier, right? And it seems like even in the government, it was kind of like, hey, let's come up with some ideas. Let's see what we can do. It seems like
mind control.
Yeah, they were interested in teletransportation and all sorts of I'll give them props for being imaginative, really, truly. But
and then you get also into the remote viewing, the efforts to bring in psychics.
Right.
I know that was one thing that did surface when I was at State Department and the Office of Counterterrorism, and all the hostages that were in Lebanon, and there were some psychics consulted, apparently, like, hey, where are these people? Because we sure as hell didn't know where they were. and neither did the psychics. So
it shows, it is, it's a really weird time, right? And it's really unconscionable when you think about it now, right? Like subjecting a college student whose brain is still forming to 3 consecutive years of drug use, experimental drug use, and all sorts of like the Stanford prison experiment, all that kind of weird shit back then, that just would be considered wildly unethical now, and that no one would do, even in the CIA, they wouldn't do it now, right? I would think.
Well, let's remember as well that early crew that inhabited the CIA comprised a lot of its membership. They were all, a large proportion of them were Ivy Leaguers, people that had been to Harvard and Yale and Princeton. And so he was, if you will, he was sort of a natural to fit into that environment. But the other thing that characterized particularly the early days of the CIA was they were very, very active in overthrowing, subverting other governments overseas. They created this Manichaean world in which it was black and white,
Right.
freedom versus communism, and
the ends always justified the means.
Always. And that's why we grabbed members of the Nazi people
Operation
who were
Paperclip.
SS operators, and embraced them all of a sudden. A guy named Gellin, in particular, who was sort of a big intel operative for the Nazis. What was fascinating about Gellin is we grabbed him and thought that he had all the best information, but it turned out he was all of his intelligence that he was passing on to the Nazi government came from an asset that he had in the Balkans. And it turned out after the war that was actually a KGB asset, and they were feeding him disinformation. So.
Oops, double agent.
Wow.
Oh, well. Yeah, and then there's like
these are the stories,
and there's
right?
also we always think about the Nazis. We always never talk about the crazy Japanese, evil Japanese scientists that also were recruited by the CIA, right? The Unit 731, war criminals in Manchuria who killed thousands of people in heinous ways.
Chemical and biological weapons that they were trying to develop.
Yeah, they anthraxed an entire town in occupied China.
So in the last couple of minutes that we have you, Larry, because I know you got to run, can we talk about how today, what Ted mentioned, our Ted mentioned at the top of the show, is that the Gen Zers who were not alive during Kaczynski's reign of terror, they don't have an actual first-person memory of what the country was going through at that time. I mean, I was a teenager in high school when Kaczynski was finally arrested, and I remember all of this. I remember the fears and stuff as a little kid when you would see a package arrive at your house. Right? I remember being a kid and having a simple view of this, going, "What if it's that Unabomber guy?"
Wait, are you serious? I don't remember that at all. I think this was definitely it wasn't like there were generalized warnings to the public.
No.
Like everybody's got to watch their packages.
No, they didn't say that. But it's just because I became a journalist for obvious. I sat with my dad and watched a lot of news, and I watched Connie Chung and I watched Peter Jennings. Those are all the things that were important to my dad, which was a big influencer on my life. So when I would see these stories as a child in the 80s, I internalized all of this to think, oh my God, like any package coming to your house can be a bomb from this guy, right? Because that's a child's thinking. And so when he's arrested in high school, I have all of these memories. I remember a sense of relief. But now you have these Gen Zers who are only 20, 22, 23 years old, who are now on TikTok that are now reading this book, right? In the same way we saw, I saw the young people. Yeah, why are they now? And is it a 30-year anniversary? They're posting these excerpts onto TikTok.
It's not because of that. I think it's because of the environment. They're suffering from ennui, right? I mean, they're really terrified of the state of the environment and the world.
Well,
I think they're looking. These are young people looking for answers.
But how can we explain the Osama bin Laden open letter to America? That was the same thing. The young people were discovering it for the first time, and then all the mainstream media took them down.
It's also forbidden fruit, right?
Now, because it gained traction. So why now are the young people, now taking up interest in Ted Kaczynski, in your opinion?
It's sort of I'll call it a generational phenomena. So let me take you back before you guys were probably born. I'm
pretty old.
You remember the book when I was in middle school, the book The Population Bomb came out.
Mm-hmm.
And boy, we were warned, and man, population was going to grow, and the world was going to be consumed with hungry people eating each other because there wasn't enough food.
Mm-hmm.
And the scientists, and it became, it was sort of a thing. My generation was the generation that started the Earth movement.
Yeah.
Then you had the issue, Immanuel Velikovsky, Worlds in Collision, talking about how external events in the universe shaped the Earth. It's just these things pop up. I think, when the ideas get across in middle school and they start populating, if nothing else, it's just part of, let's call it, teenage rebellion against adults, a way to carve out hey, I've got something new, and you never heard it from your parents. the other thing, though, concerns me. We live in an age where there is such control of the information that, thank God for shows, things like what you guys are doing, because, I've just, as an example, you can't find a single person who's allowed on any of the mainstream cable news shows or mainstream, ABC, CBS, NBC, that can defend or present why the Russians invaded Ukraine.
Yeah.
That's
not
not
allowed.
No.
It's absolutely not allowed. Anybody that tries to do that is, as I have been labeled, a puppet of Putin.
Yeah,
And
probably, if you manage to sneak on the air somehow, and you start talking about it, they just go to break.
Oh yeah.
Immediately. Yeah.
Well, Larry, you just got back from Moscow. You got to sit down with Sergei Lavrov. Do you want to talk about that for a second before we let you go?
Yeah, it was a very interesting session. He's very not pretentious at all, not full of himself. Very, he is sort of what you see on television, except he does have a good sense of humor, because at one point in our conversation, he's going back into the history of why Russia's not going to get trapped with another ceasefire. They want a firm solution to this. And then he paused and he says, "Sorry to do all the history on you." He says, "But at least I'm not like Putin doing what he did to Tucker."
Yeah, that was funny.
So I thought, the guy, he was also self-deprecating in that regard. So it was,
you can always count on a good sense of humor from Russians.
Yeah, absolutely.
People do not know that. Yeah, the Russians don't get enough credit for their humor, but it's that external, immediate presentation is kind of stern, and then once you get to know them, they're actually hilarious.
Oh, they're hilarious for sure.
Yeah. Hilarious people. Yeah.
Yeah, I'd agree.
Yeah, Larry, can people read any of the stuff that you brought back with you from Moscow, and
Sure.
Where can they find your work?
I write at sonar21.com, SONAR21.com.
Sonar 21.
Thank you, Larry. Will you come back?
Yeah, well, thank you. It was a joy being with you, and much
Please
success.
come back. All right.
Okay.
Thank
Larry.
you so much,
Take care.
Larry.
All right. Bye-bye.
That was fun. Manila, before we move on, I want to hear what you had to say. What did you think? What have you finished the Unabomber manifesto yet, or how far are you through?
About halfway through.
Oh, so you've read enough to have an opinion. I mean, so what do you think? First of all, tell us a little bit about what it says, and then say what your reaction.
So he numbers. First of all, I don't understand why maybe because he's a mathematician that he numbers all of his paragraphs, right? And
it's like a lawyer thing to do.
Is it? Oh,
yeah. If you look at legal briefs, they often do that.
I don't make it a normal habit to read manifestos, but this has always been on my to read list, and I figured, okay, I should dig into this since the anniversary is coming up. Why not? So I felt myself highlighting and taking notes of everything. It was really prescient. The things he was saying about how technology is basically usurping regular daily life, and that it'll make us less human because of it. And basically how he predicts that our tech overlord, our AI overlord, he didn't know AI, but he talks about how technology is basically going to we're going to be enslaved to it. And in so many ways, that is so accurate. And mind you, we don't know exactly when it was written. It was published by the New York Times and Washington Post
in the mid-90s.
In 1995.
Yeah.
In around this week or last week would have been the 30-year anniversary.
He typed it on a manual typewriter.
Correct. But for all we know, he wrote it. It took him years to write it. We don't know, right? Nobody knows exactly when he began writing it or when he completed it.
Well, we kind of know because he talked about it. He was interviewed, and he had a column, in Anarchy magazine, which I used to subscribe to, and it was a monthly column, even from prison. And he did talk about I'm pretty sure he wrote it about 2-3 years before its publication. He'd been working on it, but yeah.
So I even started reading, because I wanted to understand the mind of this man. You know, was he a complete psychopath? Was he completely unhinged? Was he whatever? So I came across, some of these handwritten letters that he was writing from the Supermax, the ADX in Florence, Colorado, because he had tons of pen pals, which
he did.
Doesn't surprise me. But it seems in his correspondence, and there's pages and pages of it that you can read. It seemed from his correspondence that he actually didn't mind being in the prison because he was already used to living kind of solitary anyway. So
That's
the
true.
20 plus years he was in, a 12 by 18 cabin in the woods, right? And now he's in a
although he could go for walks
cell.
and stuff, obviously. That's different.
Right. So what I've learned, what I gleaned so far from the little bit of a deep dive I've done is he sounds from his writings, Ted, he seems very consistent and very, very, obviously very intelligent from the way he writes and very, very thoughtful, right? He doesn't just rush to writing whatever he's thinking at that moment. It seems like he took time to think and write things out the same way he took time to think and write out his manifesto. It doesn't, if I didn't know that these were the writings of the Unabomber, I would never think that this person would be considered psychotic by the rest of society. So I'm not sure anymore. I grew up thinking this man was a psychopath. And now that I'm reading the manifesto and I'm reading some of his correspondence, I'm starting to wonder if I was misled and that maybe apart from the psychopathy involved in being a serial killer, outside of that, maybe he wasn't completely insane.
Well, I mean, and look, this brings up a valuable question, an important question, right? Is anybody who kills a psychopath? And the answer is no, right? I mean, all presidents of the United States kill people. Sometimes a lot of people.
But we would argue there's
police officers can kill people and do sometimes. Soldiers win medals for killing people and often come home. Many of them come home and live normal lives. You could argue you could argue that many corporate executives kill people. They make decisions that kill people. If you fire someone and they kill and they commit suicide, you kind of had something to do with their death. The point is. And I think anybody can kill. So the question is, under certain, given the right conditions, right? People, there's really no one who's incapable of killing. I don't think killing people makes you psychotic. Maybe he's psychotic, but I don't know that. I don't know. I don't think Ted Kaczynski was psychologically healthy, but I don't think he was psychotic.
Right.
I think
I think
he had more issues than the New Yorker, as the old joke goes. But he was not. He wasn't like he wasn't.
Right. He wasn't Looney Tunes.
He was lucid. And let's put it this way: if he was psychotic, he shouldn't have been sentenced to prison. He should have been sent to a mental institution, like John Hinckley. Right?
And furthermore, on that point, Ted, I
disagree with what he did. And in part because of what Larry said. It wasn't going to work,
Well, no, but before you stray too far from the whole prison aspect, I'm all for prison reform. I think it's a terrible breeding ground. If outside of a supermax where these, obviously, if you're there, you're never going to come out ever again, right? You're never going to be a free man ever again.
Well, that's where he was.
Correct. But prisons in general, I'm all for overhauls of the complete overhaul of the system. But what they did to Kaczynski as a child at 16 at Harvard is criminal. And I think I'm against all of these supermax style prisons where you are bereft of human touch. You are bereft of just being human. The punishment. The fact that you have to go to prison in the first place, that is the punishment. You are removed of your freedoms. You are removed of your liberties. That is your punishment.
Enough. Yeah, the conditions don't have to be bad.
Right. I think
I wouldn't want to go to
decisions
prison
that
even
they
if it
did-
was like the White Lotus, you know? I don't want to go.
I just think this was all like Ted Kaczynski's whole life was all screwed up, you know, from the moment that he was
He was a
small
victim.
infant,
He was a victim.
he was a victim. And I just,
You know, it's entirely arguable,
I'm not
though,
excusing it.
it's
but
it's also arguable that it's not just a question of trauma, that his dim view of the U.S. government and the capitalist system may also have been in part, you know, kind of like, look at what they did to me. They're evil, which is true. And so it's, and that informed him about their evil. It's sort of like, you know, it's sort of like when I read the LA Times, I don't really believe everything that they necessarily have to say because of my own personal insight due to my personal experience
he had a
with them.
subscription to the LA Times that his lawyers gifted him while he was at the ADX. They gifted him he asked for the LA Times subscription.
Well, it used to seem like a good paper.
This is the 90s. You know.
Yeah. No, well, back then I thought it was the best paper in America.
I mean, here he is outside of the cabin he had just built when he was still in his, you know, late 20s, right after he quit being a professor at Berkeley. I mean, everything in his life was extraordinary from the jump, Ted. I mean, the fact that he entered Harvard at 16, he was at grad school before he was even 20 years old. He was a professor before he was like 25, like at Berkeley. This was an exceptional mind, right?
That was even when to the day he died.
Oh yeah,
really.
Of course.
But like, so I wanted to get into this, and I know it's gone a little long, but I think that's okay, because it's such an important and interesting topic to me, anyway.
I feel like I got him wrong, is my point, I guess.
You did, and that's okay. But I mean, but I guess, you know, his central thesis, as I understand it, is that human beings were meant to be hunter-gatherers. That's how we evolved. We lived in clans of about 40 to 60 people, non-monogamously. Nobody owned property. We lived off the land. We hunted and ate basically the bare minimum in order to subsist, and that's it. And things start to go sideways in the Fertile Crescent, right, in Mesopotamia, when we settle down, we start storing things, we start storing food, and this ultimately all leads to, the storage of food leads to everything. It leads to money, it leads to capitalism, it leads to monogamous marriage, it leads to racism and misogyny and sexism, and it leads to pollution and ecocide and mass extinction of species. Everything ultimately devolves from that decision to stop moving around nomadically in search of food and water and plants. I mean, you know, and animals, and to say, okay, we're going to sit here and farm, and we're going to and we're going to do it here. It all comes from there, and basically, that's why he personally moved to a remote place in Montana, because he wanted to, you know, get away from civilization. Civilization, right? It's from the root civis, which is the word for city. So it's
too far from Robbie. We should point out.
True. It's to form cities, right? That's what So the idea is it's a high density urban living. He's basically like trying to get away from all that. And the message he was trying to send is, you know, we have to break civilization. There are people like Derek Jensen. He's a friend of a friend who he's a member of a group called Deep Green Resistance, and they write all sorts of books, and they have a group also, and they're deep green people. I had a member of this group who is also like a member of Earth First, which is a wanted, you know, by the FBI group, come and speak to the Association of American Editorial Cartoonists when I was the president as the keynote. It was very controversial. And basically, this is a very powerful movement in the Pacific Northwest. It's like there are a lot of people who feel this way. And I don't think they're wrong. I don't know if you can put the toothpaste back into the tube. I don't think you can. But because here we are at 8 billion people and counting. And, you know, what are we going to do? You know, we have fucked up the earth 6 ways till Sunday. But he was trying to tell us something. Kaczynski was trying to say, like, we got to stop. We got to stop.
Yeah.
We got to stop fucking burning fossil fuels. We got to stop building factories. We got to stop, we got to stop fucking nature. And he's right, because nature's burning up. The oceans are boiling. Everything is it's literally the most important political message that there could possibly be. Like, who cares about police brutality if there's no police, because we're all dead because the human race is extinct?
Right. I mean, he was a radical version of, I would say, like the Amish. I mean, that's effectively what the Amish keep to themselves. They're self-sufficient. They
farm. They fuck up the they fuck up the planet too. And they deal meth.
I don't know about that.
I don't know. The Amish are not the model here. I mean, the model would be people who,
they don't use cars.
The Kyrgyz are the model. Okay, they live in yurts. They live off the land nomadically. They don't take more than they need. They're not interested in accumulating possessions.
Or the original Native Americans, right? Before we slaughtered them all in the Trail of
theoretically. Although there's a lot of evidence that they created a lot of ecocide before, even in the pre-Columbian era, right? I mean, like for example, the Great Plains states, those were massive old growth forests, and it was before Chris Columbus ever showed up.
Down?
They fucked them all up. Yeah. They burned it all down.
The natives took them down?
Yeah, they did. Yeah, the natives are
They're
not
like, I want to live here.
Yeah, the whole, the 1970s ad with the guy in the canoe, like,
yes,
crying.
I remember that.
Like, not really. I mean, some tribes more than others.
Huh.
It's really complicated. I mean, human beings, and it's really interesting because they were isolated. They weren't influenced by what the West, but they did it anyway.
So weird.
And they built massive cities, right, in Central America.
Well, like the Aztecs and stuff. Yeah, that's really interesting. That Central America, not Panama, like in the mountaintops of Peru. And
those societies overbuilt and overfarmed, and it led to they had collapse before the conquistadors ever showed up. So
that's fair. Yeah, that's fair. I mean, I guess we could be a longer version of what happened to the people that inhabited the mountaintops in Peru, right? I mean, we've just extended. Well, I don't know how.
Or a shorter version. I mean,
or shorter, because I don't know.
Their civilizations lasted several thousand years. Yeah.
Oh wow.
Yeah,
okay,
they had a better run than we're likely to have.
Yeah, because
I mean,
hasn't been so long.
Industrialization is
Western.
Yeah, Western European industrialization starts in the mid 1700s, right? So it's not that long.
Tangentially related, the Lao historical podcast that I'm working on outside. So before your people, Ted, the French came into Indochina, in the 1500s, so in the 16th century, in the early 1500s, the Portuguese had already gone into Siam, which is modern day Thailand, and introduced guns and gun making to them in the 1500s. Even though, by the time the French colonialists came, it was no match for the French firepower in the late 16th or 17th, 1800s. So it would have been the 19th century. The 19th century when the French came, it was no match for French firepower and French industrialization, modern steamboats and things like that. It was no match, obviously. But that is basically the extent of Western culture as far back. I mean, for hundreds of years, we can point to Western industrialized culture as being a violent and brute force. I'm not saying I dislike Western culture. I live in it and I enjoy the benefits of being in, a hegemonic country. But I don't think it's a nice thing to do to random people that you don't know that look different than you. I guess they don't look different for me, but
right.
But
no, that's look. There are anthropologists and sociologists who theorize that the Angles and the Saxons, the two tribes, that they were the most violent and brutal people who have ever existed in recorded history on Earth. That basically, look, it's not to say violence is true. Violence is part of human
universal
culture. I mean,
clear,
obviously,
that's universal.
Look, the Warring States period that unified China, right? Like 3,500 years ago, that they didn't need any help from the West to do that.
No,
they did that all on their own. Genghis Khan, he did that all on his own.
Oh yeah, I mean, just humankind we're a violent animal, I would say. But
the question is, were we violent? To get back to Ted Kaczynski, we were certainly not this violent, and maybe not really significantly violent before settled civilization, when other people had things that we coveted, and then we decided we would take them by hurting them. Because here's the thing: if you think about like what kind of, let's say we're all living nomadically, and you're in like Manila's clan, and I'm in Ted's clan. What kind of things are going to cause conflict? I mean, nobody has anything, so there's nothing you want. There's nothing you need. The worst thing that could possibly happen is you want to hunt in the same place we want to hunt, and and we're hungry, and you're
pissing me off. Your clan is hanging out in the river.
But we're more likely to just go down the river and go somewhere else than we are to be like, fuck her, we're taking that fish. We're going to kill her and take that fish. I mean, it could happen, and it probably did happen, but it wasn't that common.
We're talking like 3000 BC Laos here, or BCE, before the Common Era. 3,000 years before the birth of Christ, there is evidence now that in Laos that these small villages of, clans of 10, 20 people were popping up. And there were small skirmishes, where you're beating each other with sticks and stones, because we're talking 3,000 years before.
It's analogous to Papua New Guinea, where they have all these little individual tribes who sometimes have clans. Wars with each other,
because
and
they
eat
were
each other
pissed
sometimes.
Off. Ooh. Well, they were, these ancient Lao were pissed off that, let's say, your clan, Ted, was hanging out at the riverbed for way too long, and my clan wants to fish. You're in the sweet spot.
Yeah.
Get the fuck out. And you didn't get the fuck out, so we're going to start beating you with rocks and clubs.
Sure.
So that's kind of how that happened. But, fewer deaths. So I'll wrap up on this point before we go to some of the news. But what I'm learning from this historical podcast is that, and based on the breadth of knowledge that I have from having been a reporter for the better part of 20 years, is that when I'm looking at this part of Southeast Asia, of Indochina, that the proliferation, the mass scale, the sheer scale of industrialized murder was brought to Asia by Westerners. It just didn't exist in that scale, like where you can just mow everybody down because of technology. And that is exactly what Ted Kaczynski, I think so far, the vibe that I'm getting from the manifesto, he doesn't refer to, at least not yet, he's not referring to, like nuclear weapons, or he's not referring to that stuff right now. He's talking about just straight technology that we're using right now, right? That'll cause the death of us and of our species and the world. Yeah. But I'm noticing a trend here is that when you figure out, when you're a society that figures out how to mass scale industrial killing, and you've found a way to profit off of it, that really can be accredited to the West. I'm just saying.
No, that's just undeniably true. And also what's interesting is that we turn it into, it goes beyond like, once, like, for example, the Chinese Warring States period, as soon as the new emperor, sort of unified everything, killed all his rivals, he was like, now it is time to be at peace. And of course it's like, well, that's very self-serving of you, Mr. Emperor.
That's convenient.
But it was kind of like, but we're done here. Like, fighting's done. The right person, me, has won. and so everything's cool. So we will all be at peace. But that's not how we do it here. I mean, the United States could just choose to be at peace forever. We have an incredibly great geographical situation, right? I mean, no one's coming to
a nation state.
No one's going to hurt us, right? Not significantly.
We've put the Canadians in their place. That we put them on check. They know where
9/11 would never have happened.
And the Mexicans know.
If we weren't involved in foreign affairs, if we weren't involved in Saudi Arabia, Al-Qaeda never would have attacked us, right? So the point is that we can be left completely alone and live at peace. We're choosing as an industry to go and start wars all over the place. It's our bag. It's our business.
It's our business model. That's unfortunately where it is. Okay. Let's flip the show the other way now and jump into some of the top headlines. I'm going to go ahead and hit the jaws.
I kind of like this format. Anyway, all imports into the United States, yesterday was quote unquote Liberation Day, according to Trump, are now going to face a 10% tariff. That, of course, was Trump's deal. Anyway, many nations with existing taxes on U.S. goods will also have additional reciprocal tariffs. This is, of course, a huge change in U.S. trade policy. So a lot of countries are being affected, about 60 of them. The U.S. thinks that they're imposing unfair trade restraints against us. Notably, Chinese goods have a new 34% tariff on them. Japan, 24%. The EU, 20%. And my personal favorite, Lesotho, which will see the highest. Poor Lesotho, 50%. Lesotho, for people who don't know, is a very strange country. It's in the middle of South Africa. It's like an island in the middle of South Africa, completely surrounded by South Africa. Anyway,
that's your favorite. Wait, my favorite.
So I'm
reading
country.
Directly from the news. U.S. has imposed tariffs on the Australian territory of Heard, like Amber Heard, like I heard that, Heard, and McDonald Islands, which is uninhabited by humans, but has colonies of seals and penguins.
Those fucking seals. They think they think they can fuck with the U.S. of A.
What are those
again?
Ted, what kind of shit deals do you think the penguins were giving America?
You can't trust those little black and white tuxedoed fucks.
Those little assholes. How pretentious, always wearing a tuxedo.
Yeah, that's what the whole March of the Penguins was all about. We're here to fuck with the Americans.
How did that happen? How did this get on the tariff? How did Heard and McDonald Islands get on the tariff list?
Mexico
want to know.
Mexico and Canada, 25%. All foreign cars, 25%. So stock market is kind of fucked up right now. Investors are flocking to government bonds and notes. The 10-year U.S. Treasury bond, which goes contrary to the value of the stock market, was down 4% before the show. I don't know where it is right now. That's the lowest since last October. Commodities also are spiraling. Oil, Brent crude oil is the international benchmark of the oil industry, down 4 points before the show started to about $71.90 a barrel. The reason that's worth noting is because it's an indication of where the overall international economy is deemed to be. So during, for example, the international COVID lockdown, oil prices were down to about $50 a barrel. And you might say, oh, that's great because gas is going to be really cheap. And it's true. Yeah. Gas will be really cheap. But that's a bad sign overall because it basically means that analysts think that there's not going to be any consumer economy. The stocks Europe at 600 index fell 1.7 points yesterday in pre-trading. Most sectors, banks, tech, consumer goods are falling. Everything's slumping. And manufacturing hubs for shoes and clothes are getting particularly slammed. 46% tariff against Vietnam, 32 against Indonesia. Odds are the shoes you're wearing, if they're sneakers, are probably made there. Adidas and Puma stocks both dipped about 9 points in Europe. Pandora, a Danish jewelry company that makes its shit in Thailand, is down 12 points. Nike down 8 in pre-market trading before we went on the air. Maersk, which is the giant shipping container company based in Denmark, down 7 points. Deutsche Bank, which was Trump's favorite choice bank, down 4 points. HSBC, Hong Kong-based Commerce Bank, a big European bank, all down. This is all a general sign of like the global economy is deemed to be in trouble. I got to say, of all the stuff that Trump is doing, this is really truly the make or break moment for this administration. If this is likely not to go well. And when it doesn't go well, it's likely to fuck up the economy 6 ways till Sunday, and the voters will not forgive Donald Trump or the Republicans.
Yeah, but he doesn't care.
It's a big chance. It's a big risk.
Well, Trump doesn't care because he's not coming back. And secondly, I don't think he actually cares about the party, because many of those people are never Trumpers, and he's, whether foolish or not that he's allowed some of them into his cabinet, whatever. I don't think Trump actually cares about the party.
By the way,
doing what
I'm checking the stock market right now. The Dow Jones Industrial Average is crashing as we speak. It is down 3.7%. We've already lost 1,552 points since the opening just 57 minutes ago, now at 40,673. So this is obviously a reaction to
I think there's going to be panic on the street. By that I mean Wall Street. And I think, Ted, but what I can't think or figure out is why he would be doing this, because it's obviously deliberate.
Oh, it's deliberate. Of course it's deliberate.
It's deliberate. But what is the end goal?
Well, the end goal is, so here's the thing. It's like he's a child who forgot why he was sent to school, which is to study and do well in school and bring back A's to mom and dad. He was sent to the White House to fight inflation. That was his job. This is going to do exactly the opposite. And so the way I like to assess policies is to assume that everything works out exactly the way that Trump, in this case, says it's going to. So let's just say this all works fabulously. It's not going to help with inflation. So if it all works fabulously, prices go up and for all foreign goods, and then basically it becomes not economically feasible for foreign companies, like let's say auto companies, to sell Audis and Saabs and Toyotas and Hondas in the United States. They all stop doing that. All the American companies, like the big three, they get a big boost and they get to sell more of their cars, right? The American companies benefit, they boom, they're able to hire more people. That's the hope here, is that you're basically protecting American industries and jobs and giving them an advantage in the U.S. Consumer market. Okay, fine. Let's assume that works. Let's assume that the losses that they suffer overseas don't offset those increases in the United States. So I'm going to give Trump full credit. This works great. The problem for consumers is now you no longer have foreign competition in the United States, right? So like one of the things that keep prices would go up generically. Let's just say you snapped your fingers and you got rid of all these foreign automakers. They just disappeared, didn't exist anymore. Well, it's the law of supply and demand. There's fewer companies competing for the same market. So now Ford and GM and so on, they can charge more for their vehicles.
Sure.
And why wouldn't they? They're going to charge whatever the market can bear. That's capitalism. You'd be stupid to do anything else. And they're not stupid. So the prices are going to go up no matter what. And they're going to stay up no matter what. Even if this works fabulously, which it probably won't. So
it's not.
So this is I'm very much into, if I could go back into a time machine in 1965, I would do exactly what Donald Trump is doing. It's just that this is the right solution for something that should have been done 70 years ago. And now it's too late. The globalization horse is out of the barn and running wild, and there's nothing you can fucking do. It's the wrong solution. He's fighting the last war.
If this existed in a vacuum,
yeah,
is a different argument. But
yeah, and it's just like it's not. So this is really, this is an insane decision, really.
Yeah, I think a lot of people are going to hurt. Okay, let's move on to the next topic, because I think more people will care about this one.
All right. Amazon is bidding to buy TikTok. That, according to someone familiar with the ongoing discussions in the White House, to try to find someone who's not Chinese to buy the company. The company, by the way, does not say that they're on sale. Anyway,
neither does Greenland, but
the bid arrived via a letter to Vance and Commerce Secretary Howard Lutnick. Let's see if he even lasts. Apparently, he's pissing off everyone in MAGA world. Given he was compared in the New York Post to a mosquito at a nudist camp. Given the last minute timing, days before the deadline on Saturday to stave off a ban, the bid is not being taken seriously, said the source. Spokesperson for Amazon didn't say anything about it. Bezos, the owner of Amazon, did not respond to a request for comment. Trump is expected to look at the offers for TikTok Wednesday, and that was yesterday. I don't know what happened while he was hanging out with Lutnick and Vance. And Trump has tapped Vance and National Security Advisor Michael Waltz. So if you want to know what's going on, to see what with TikTok, we can just, I guess, look at their
hop into Waltz's public signal.
Or their Gmail. You're probably already on it if you're listening to us.
His password is like password 123.
Exactly, or 12345. So anyway, if and when there's an announcement on TikTok, it'll come from President Trump, the White House official says.
Which is weird. Isn't that weird?
Well, it's very weird, especially since the company's not for sale.
So why? I don't understand how Trump. I mean, I get
they're in court fighting this.
He's forced to enact this law that Biden put into place.
He's not forced to do it. He could
he's punted on it, and he can. But at some point, remember Biden left office saying, "Well, that's going to be up to Donald Trump if he wants to enforce it." So here we are. He's punted on it once already. I don't know that he's going to punt again. He might. I literally have no idea.
That's what's going to happen.
I don't know. But the weird thing to me is, why is Donald Trump looking at the offers? He's not a party to the company or to negotiations. Why is he vetting the deals?
Nobody knows. And it doesn't matter. Nothing's going to happen. The deadline's going to come on Saturday. Mark my words. He's going to punt for another 90 days. Mark my words.
Look at this guy's name. That's so weird. His name is Nicolas Le Bourgeois.
Le Bourgeois. It's actually not an unusual name.
Really?
No, not if you're French.
Huh.
He who lives in the suburbs. That's literally what it means.
Really?
Yeah.
Okay.
All right. So Trump said he's going to travel to Saudi Arabia and other countries in the Middle East for the first foreign trip of his second term. He said he's going to stop in Qatar and the UAE and other places. In Saudi Arabia, he's going to focus on the Saudis possibly using their sovereign fund to invest here in the U.S., which I guess we're going to desperately need after the stock market continues to crash. Trump says he is anticipating up to $1 trillion in investments from the Saudis. He got $450 billion his first term. We partook in $450 billion worth of investments into American companies, he said. I view it as jobs more than anything else, and now we're close to $1 trillion. So it's more than double the number that we did when I first came into office. Thank you, arithmetic genius. Trump suggested that his visits to Qatar and the UAE will also focus on possible investments from those nations, as he noted that the tremendous jobs will be created in those 2 or 3 days of his trip.
Okay. So we should also point out $600 million after Trump left office the first time. $600 million went to Jared Kushner's whatever hedge fund or whatever fake thing that he's working on. I mean, that's obviously like greasing the hands, the palms of the Kushner family by way of Ivanka into the Trump family. This is like, who are they kidding? Like, that's the Saudi money. What value has Jared Kushner brought the Saudis? Nothing. But they gave him $600 million to invest in his, I forget the name of his company. It was something similar, akin to like buddies or like something. It means friends.
Douche Corp.
It's basically that. And so here we are again. I can't even care anymore, Ted. I can't. Honestly, I'm out of shits to give. Like, I really don't. Like, I have no more fucks there. My bag is empty. At this point, it's just kind of like, all right, dude's tanking the economy on purpose. Then he's going to funnel in $1 gajillion from the Saudis. And I
Well,
don't
the
know.
good news is the Saudis are going to finally find work, something for all the underemployed journalists to do. They're just going to get chopped up and dissolved in acid. So, bone saw.
Oh, that'll be fun. So, such is life, Ted. I just, whatever. At this point, it's like, okay, fine.
Fine. As I was saying before we went on, that's why I always keep this handy. Anyway, all right, let's move on here. Carolyn Levitt, she's the White House press secretary, confirms that Elon Musk, this will bring joy to many people, will leave his position as Doge Master next month, as previously planned. Recent news reports tried to indicate that Musk's departure was unexpected. Well, that's ridiculous. That's not true. It's fully expected. Everyone said that it was going to be 6 months. And special employees can only work for the government for 130 days in a 1-year period, which means he has to leave by May 30th, although that's going to seem like 1,500 years from now by the time it rolls around. Levitt was responding to a Politico report that claimed Trump told his staff and the cabinet that Musk was preparing to leave in the coming weeks, which she claimed, I'm going to say accurately, was a non-story.
Yeah, it's a non-story. She's absolutely right. We knew from the beginning. I mean, it's not, I don't know why Politico is trying to make this a thing. It's not a thing. We've known.
There is no thing. Yeah, everybody's known.
There is no thing. It's known. Elon is not a regular government employee. And we've known this was a temporary thing. But I think the interesting story regarding Elon is he is now outwardly saying it, that since he became Doge Master, that his businesses are suffering bigly.
Oh, poor Elon. Well,
poor billionaire. Poor richest man on earth. Which leads us to our next story. Actually,
well, he's not really. I mean, look, SpaceX is, I mean, Tesla's in the tank, although frankly, it has I think a bright future. But SpaceX obviously has these massive government contracts that it's raking in. So that's going to more than make up for it for him.
SpaceX is fine. Totally fine. So that leads us perfectly. This poor crying billionaire, Ted, he's like, this time that I'm investing into Doge, my personal businesses are crumbling. They're taking a hit. I got to go back to my real job of, taking us to Mars. That's basically what he's saying. But that leads us into our next story, which is this one. Let me shrink it a little bit, I think, so you can. Mm-hmm. Okay. So every now and again, I like to pop this up here from Visual Capitalist. How popular are the richest Americans? Basically, how popular are the billionaires of America? Mm-hmm. So does this come as any surprise to you, Ted? Warren Buffett ranked as the most popular billionaire in America.
That's not terribly surprising.
52% favorability rating, 26% unfavorable, and the gray area is never heard of them, and another gray area is
actually, though, that's pretty low considering Warren Buffett has pledged to give away every cent he owns, pretty much. And so the fact that he's, such a philanthropist and lives modestly, has an interesting triad relationship, if you know about that. He famously, I don't know if this is still true, but for many years, he, his wife, and his assistant / girlfriend all shared a bed and used to send out a joint Christmas card every year. So,
is this real?
If don't come a knocking, if Tulsa's a rockin'. Yeah.
No kidding.
Yeah. So
he looks so grandfatherly and just I would never.
Yeah, don't judge a book by its cover. So So Warren's like kind of like a. Oh. He's a wild man. So I would really honestly think that a guy like if you 50, I guess you can't really be like any cooler than Warren Buffett and be a billionaire. And so if you're only going to be able to get a 52% approval rating, it shows Americans don't really like billionaires.
I think that's what that says. And this is all ranked based on the highest favorability.
Mhm.
Bill Gates, 49% approval. Like what? And 43% unfavorable.
Bill Gates has also pledged to give away all his money. The 43%, comes from the fact that he was hanging with the Epster, and also everybody who overpaid for Windows back in the day.
Well,
and Microsoft Office.
And
resentments linger.
Below him is Elon Musk. Even though he's the richest man, he's got a 39% favorability rating.
Higher than 55%. Higher than you would think, actually.
I thought, I'm surprised. 55% unfavorable. Michael Bloomberg. Here's the one that threw me for a loop, Ted. 29% favorability. 29% say, I don't know who the fuck Michael Bloomberg is. And 39% don't like him.
Yeah.
So I'm like, wait a minute. You have the same exact number of the people that like you as the people who have never fucking heard of you.
I know. And it's weird too. You would think that having a magazine and media network named after you might raise your profile. Running for president. Although, he didn't last long.
No, but even still, he's just been a part of like the American media circuit for 30 plus years.
But I guess it's really just business. It's business and it's New York. And that's it. No one else knows who the fuck he is.
So literally like almost a third of the people polled have no fucking clue who he is.
Yep.
That's crazy to me.
That is interesting. Yeah.
Jeff Bezos, 29. Elon Musk is more popular than Jeff Bezos, who's at 29%.
Well, that makes sense.
55% unfavorable.
So listen, Jeff Bezos is despised because of his reputation for being a shitty, mean employer. That's what this is about. Also, he didn't really pour glory on himself through his divorce. His ex-wife is very likable.
Yeah.
It may be unfair. She might be a total bitch, but in private, we don't know. But she does a good job with her public persona. But I think definitely it's just everyone knows like what an asshole employer Amazon is.
Who are the 13% that don't know him and 3% that don't care?
Yeah, the 13% who've never heard of Jeff Bezos, those people I'm just going to say shouldn't be allowed to vote. I'm serious. If you've never heard of Jeff Bezos, how could you fucking vote? Why should you be allowed to vote? And I'm serious
when I say
You're too stupid and ignorant, right?
I wish I could be among that 13%. I feel like it would be.
And then I wouldn't vote.
Ignorance is bliss. Yeah, and I'd just be like, today's election day? Oh, I don't
vote in races that where it's like a bunch of judges and I've never heard of them. I just don't vote on that.
I do. I vote in local. Mark Zuckerberg, an even lower approvable.
I don't know where he got. I don't know. I don't know how he got 26%.
26% of the people like him.
I'm not even sure his wife likes him.
Well, fuck. After he gave her that hideous statue, like what the fuck is that? 64% dislike him.
Well, he's a very unpleasant person. So,
are we sure though?
Well, maybe he's not unpleasant.
He's like a dorky,
he's just very He's very unlikable though.
Right. He doesn't. He's not somebody I would want to hang out with. Let's just say that. Like. And I wouldn't call him up and be like, hey, Mark, like, what's up, dude? What are you doing? Want to go grab a pizza?
I would definitely want to meet him and figure out what he's about. But it would be like sort of like, I don't know. It would be kind of like, the time I had a tarantula in my hand. I wanted to like, what are you about? Like, it's like a bug.
I mean, if he was just Mark Zuckerberg, the kid that went to Harvard, you knew him growing up. Does he really seem like the dude you want to hang out with and grab a beer with? I don't think so.
Probably not.
I don't think so. Unlike George W. Bush, that people are like, I would have a beer with him.
All right. So who's this next guy? I've never heard of him.
You don't know who Steve Ballmer is?
I'm in that 65% who've never heard of him.
Wow. Well,
Steve Ballmer could come in here and fuck Clovis, and I could not turn him into the cops. I would not know.
Oh, well, I mean, he's a tech. The rest of these are all tech people.
I know. I know all the other ones.
We can ignore Steve Ballmer. Not a big deal.
Wait, who is he?
I forget what company. He founded.
You don't know who he is either. What are you talking about?
No, I know who he is. He's a tech billionaire. But I don't know his fucking life
All right.
profile.
All right.
But
He's
a tech venture
former
capitalist.
CEO of Microsoft. So
And
he's basically,
and now he's a venture
he's like
capital
he's
guy.
like basically Steve Jobs, but not Steve Jobs.
But he's a venture
He's
capitalist.
69,
guy
but he looks
guy.
about 169. Okay.
And he does VCs. He puts in a lot of money in all over the place in Silicon Valley.
All right.
Larry Ellison, we know. Like, who cares? Larry Page, okay, we know. Okay, but Sergey Brin is what is hilarious.
A lot of these lower people nobody's heard of.
No, right.
72% don't know who Sergey Brin was.
But that's the funny thing.
I have a Sergey Brin story.
They should know.
From LA.
They should know Sergey Brin because they're probably using Google, which
True.
he invented.
Sergey Brin also
72% don't know who the hell he is.
He looks so much like Johnny Depp. It's a little frightening.
Really, you think?
Facially.
Oh, he's the ex-husband of Nicole Shanahan, Kennedy's.
Speaking of which, I'm so glad you brought that up. So remember the whole scandal where Sergey Brin got with his Asian girlfriend and was, I guess,
Shanahan.
Is she? She's Asian?
It's Nicole Shanahan. It's her. She's half Chinese.
Oh,
yeah.
Right.
Yeah, it's her.
Then,
they have a kid together.
Right. And then she was working with RFK Jr., right?
Yes, she was the Veep.
She was the Veep when he was running. I always forget about that. Anyway, so he was catting around with her when his marriage was falling apart. Anyway, while that was all happening and it was all over the tabs, I happened to be staying at a hotel in Santa Monica, and the elevator door opens up in the lobby, and there's Sergey and Nicole, hungover, bloated, puffy, clearly had been fighting, and they'd been raging all night long. I'm an early riser. It was like 7 o'clock or something. And they looked like they had not had any sleep that night. Yeah. And who knows how much whatever they were up to, nothing good or healthy. They certainly weren't coming from the gym. And they looked like shit. I remember thinking, that guy's insanely wealthy and he looks like dog shit. And he's a lot younger than me too. It was very, very weird.
Yeah, he's only like in his early 50s. He's the Google co-founders are young guys. I forget the name of the other one. I always only remember Sergey Brin because back in the day, I remember thinking he was mildly attractive for a tech nerd. Like,
oh yeah. Oh, he definitely, and he has swagger for sure.
Yeah, I mean, but no, the majority of people have never heard of him.
Depressed. Oh my God.
Most people, 72% of people polled have never heard of him.
If he had gone and blown his brains out right after I saw him, I would not have been surprised. He looked like shit.
Well, I mean, it ended badly. He and Nicole Shanahan. She doesn't say much about it.
Not for her.
Well, not for her, because she walked away with a big chunk of his money. Yep. But there's that. But anyway, I thought it was funny that nobody knows who Sergey Brin is.
No,
and they use Google every
day.
Like, hasn't it ever occurred to anyone, like, if you're using this thing every day, to be like, I wonder who invented this thing I use every day? Like, well,
I don't think anyone cares about that,
Like, it's Sergey Brin, and I forget the name of the other guy, but he has an American name. Sergey Brin is he's Russian Jewish, I think, and
that's right.
His family immigrated to the U.S. when he was a very small boy. So
I think it was the other one, Larry Page.
Is it Larry?
I think so. Yeah, the one that you skipped over.
I was like, oh yeah. I just yada-yada'd him.
Yeah, you yada-yada'd him.
I yada-yada'd Larry. I was like, who's the other guy? I don't know why nobody talks about Larry Page, but I mean, he's the other co-founder with the very American name.
He's the other white meat.
Yeah, but everybody talks about, everybody at least only knows of Sergey Brin because I think
those numbers would have been different 15 years ago, I mean, they've kind of fallen out of the news. I mean, who knows what freaking Sergey Brin is even up to,
Other than him hooking up with Nicole Shanahan, getting married, like you said, it was a rush to marriage. I'm not going to hate on that. I got married very quickly. So there was no shade on them for doing that. And I remember
he hasn't done anything, right? Like,
He doesn't need to, Ted. He has $136 billion. He doesn't
Well, that
need
would
to.
give you the ability to do all sorts of things, right? You could buy Vanuatu. You could do anything you wanted.
The guy that made MySpace, what's his face? Tom, everyone's friend Tom. You know what Tom is doing after he sold off?
Oh, so he's doing AI. He's working on Gemini, which is Google's.
Oh, Sergey?
Yeah, it's Google's ChatGPT, basically.
Sergey's
Sergey's at the Google office every day, they say.
Oh.
And he's
I
like
thought
really
he was just
interested.
like,
and he's also supports LTA research and exploration. They're trying to make Zeppelins again. That's not likely to work.
Yeah, that's a smart idea. Okay, great.
I mean, well, when you have a lot of money, whatever. And he's also into philanthropy.
So
He funds Parkinson's research, bipolar research.
Cool.
I wonder why someone who is married to Nicole would be interested in researching bipolar disorder. Can't imagine. No personal connection there at all.
Well, to that end, we'll leave it our really bipolar show, Ted, because we go from like serial killers to
By the way, I kind of like the main topic. Hey, I wonder if you're in the chat in either the Rumble or the Google
or the YouTube chat
or the YouTube chat. Yeah, if you guys could chime in. Do you like headlines up front, or do you like the main topic up front? What do you like on top?
Yeah, I'm going to do this in real time. I'm putting this out there. I'm looking at you right now in the Rumble room, even though you couldn't get audio because we figured out what the problem is, but I can't jump out of it because we're in the middle of the show. So if you guys are getting the audio, Scary Girl says guest first, and she's one of our regulars.
She is. Yeah.
So, okay. So I guess it depends also on the guest availability, obviously. Wandon also says
agrees.
guest first.
Mm-hmm.
Okay. So I'm feeling like people like hearing the guests up front.
I just intuitively.
Mr. Lisa
I intuitively
didn't know there was an order.
I say give the people what they want, right? I mean,
I'm fine with it either way, but it also depends on guest availability. Like if
that's true, but I mean sometimes they often just ask us like when do you want me to come on, and
so we can ask them for if you guys prefer guests at the top, and then on the back end, Ted and I talk about like the top crazy stories or whatever it is that's like running in the news today. Then we could do that on the back end and flip the show, the format. So I'm gauging. Wandon says check cat more often. That's okay.
Well, okay. The cat is sleeping on the sofa right now, so he's all right.
Where be Clovis?
Yeah,
okay.
I could go. Hold on, I'll just go get him.
People want to see Clovis, man. Okay, so what happened? So what happened was, what happened is, since Robbie normally runs not normally. We just started to switch to the Rumble
Proof
Studio.
of Cat Life is here.
Hi, Clovis. So let me just explain to the viewers real quickly what happened with the audio on Rumble is that, as you know, we've only started using Rumble Studio the last couple of days, but producer Robbie is the one that usually has been running the Rumble Studio from Montana, and I'm using the software to get all of our stuff on the screen, and Robbie punts the feed from YouTube onto the Rumble Studio. So now we know why you don't have audio is because Robbie says, because he's at his real job, it pays a lot better than we do, Ted.
That's true.
That it's because my audio driver is being occupied by StreamYard, which is the program we use to get the show up and running. So now we know that the Rumble Studio has to function elsewhere on a different computer. So that's going to be you, Ted, on the days that Robbie has to do his real job. You're going to have to run Rumble Studio.
Yeah, I still don't know how to do that, but all right.
I did it today. The only reason it didn't work with audio was only because my audio driver is occupied by StreamYard. So now we've got it figured out, and Robbie can walk you through it. He walked me through it this morning, and I am far from any tech genius. I am far from Larry Page.
Or Sergey Brin.
Who?
This cat's so stretchy.
Yeah.
Look at him.
Steve Ballmer.
Look at this cat. It's insane. Look at him.
He wants to stretch. I'm all for it. I'm wearing Clovis color today. See, Team Clovis.
Yep.
See, all
Always.
right. That is going to do it for us. We'll definitely keep your the viewers' recommendations. We'll take them to heart. We will try to get more guests that are available at the top of the hour, and try to do that off the top. So we'll give the guests the options of what timing works best for them. And if they're available at the top of the hour, then that's what we'll do. No big deal. No big deal. Ted and I are down for it.
All right.
All right. That does it. We'll be back tomorrow. You're going to have to figure this out, Ted, because
What do you mean?
Robbie has his real job. You're going to have to do Rumble Studio.
What?
Robbie has his real job to go to tomorrow, too.
I can't do Rumble Studio. I don't know how to do it.
Gen X panic.
Oh.
I just remembered I'm going to be
Yeah, exactly.
on the International Space Station tomorrow.
Yes.
Anyway.
If not, then I have to kick the Rumble Studio and we'll just do it our old way based on the StreamYard.
We'll figure it out.
Yeah, so we'll do it. All right, guys. Thanks for tuning in. I hope you guys enjoyed our anniversary episode of Ted Kaczynski.
That's what it is.
It is. I mean, I highly advise people give this a second look and kind of go past whatever your initial opinions of him were as what I thought I had until I started reading. And I'm kind of like, oh, that's kind of fucked up what happened to you as a kid. And all the adults in your life kind of fucked you over and kind of turned you into this. Okay, I get it. You're an abused kid. Like, that's what this is.
All right.
Just don't blow people up. That's all I'm saying.
Never. All right.
Adios, amigos. Thanks for being here. See you tomorrow, 10 a.m. Eastern.
A bientôt.
Bye.
Au revoir.